Oh, hey, girlfriends. Welcome to the Shameless Era podcast. I'm Lindsay Dalen.
I'm Justine Eno.
And this week we're back with another epic interview. And this week we are so excited to bring Heather Alexander with Grato Coaching to the podcast. Heather, thank you so much for being here. We're so pumped you agreed to join us today.
Thanks for having me.
We had the opportunity to see you speak live recently at the 2024 Women of Influence Awards here in Grand Prairie, and you were such a natural. Your story was so engaging. You had everyone in the room just waiting on bated breath for where you were going to go next. Can you walk us through how that experience felt for you?
Well, first of all, it was quite an honor to be asked to speak at the Women of Influence Awards, especially what I consider to be like my hometown, to go back to Grand Prairie and to be able to do it there and see so many familiar faces in the crowd. It was an absolute honor. Sharing my story is always for all people. I won't just say women. I work primarily with women, so I often reference women, but I love men too. Sharing my story was vulnerable. You know, it's always vulnerable to do it on a public stage. And ironically, I had one, actually our mayor, Jackie, who I've known for many, many years, approach me after and say, I've known you for 20 years and I didn't know some of the stories you shared. So it really was a realization that we are meant to share our stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's what makes us authentic. To speak to your name, that's what makes us shameless. So we don't carry the shame, and we can share it. And not only just sharing a story, and I think my holdback sometimes from sharing the story is not wanting to present as victim, which I'm not. So being able to tell the story along with the lessons and the opportunities that I found and that I was able to receive in those moments during my story.
Those are my favorite types of speakers to watch, is the ones that are so engaging and can go into that space of the hardships, because I think that that's what's so relatable and allows other women or other people listening to get out of that victim stage that you were speaking of, because they realize they're not the only ones that have experienced a crappy time or a certain event in their life. So I loved hearing you speak. It was the first time I had the pleasure of meeting you. I got to hear you speak and hear your story. But it was so vulnerable, and I commend you for that, for getting up there, because it's never easy to do that. So
Totally.
yeah.
Thank you.
So when you reflect back on your story, you shared that you were a young mom raising your son like 3,000 miles away from your family. I mean, there's so many questions there, but what was the decision to move so far away from your family at such a transitory time in your life?
Yeah, probably not one of my wisest life decisions, and I made many that weren't wise. That, I was young and we had moved recently from the East Coast of Canada to the West Coast. So I was brand new mom, had my baby in tow. I was still with his biological dad. We brought him along with us to make the move. He decided he didn't like Edmonton, where we were living at the time. It was a big change from big city to Summerside, PEI. That was home for us. He decided to go back. So I'm like, well, I thought I was so grown up. Well, I'm following my man. That's the thing we could do. Like, this is our family, not even processing. By that time, I was only 16. So yeah, I made the decision that I needed to keep my family together. My new family was my son, my boyfriend at the time, myself, and away we went. I shared that we did not stay together, but I stayed in PEI to finish high school and to not kind of move again. And I had dreams. I was heading off to university, I had all kinds of plans, and I just thought I'd just execute them there, because why not? I never really thought about how far away I was from support.
So with moving away then from your support and having a child, like, we know how much we rely on our community, right? Our village as moms to raise our child and children and help us out. How did you find a new village of women? How, in a new place, in a brand new setting, not really knowing many people. How did you go about that? Like, that's vulnerable in itself and tough.
Yeah, well, his family, so my son's biological family on that side was still there. However, his grandma, who was an absolute doll, raised 7 children of her own and said, like, I will not be your babysitter. And I'm like, got it. And I was on social assistance. So through that program, there were some supports. So I did have him in daycare, and really, I was in such a different place because I didn't have a strong peer group at school because people weren't going to pick up their children to take them home to make supper and get ready for the next day. You know, they were heading, doing something completely different. So I just ended up meeting people that were a little bit older than me, and I've always been social. So I've always had people in my place, in my spaces, and I just met, you know, having family there and living on the island. Previously, I had connections, so I didn't feel totally alone. And quite truthfully, you just do what you have to do. You know, at the time, I never thought about what could be different. I've never thought that way. I think about what's here and now and how do I make the best of this situation? What is it that I need to be doing today, tomorrow? I don't go too far ahead.
I love that mentality, Heather. And honestly, like, I can't even imagine being 16 in the shoes that you were in, like the dumb stuff we were doing at 16. You
No.
were so grown up, and to have such an ambitious, brave, courageous spirit at that time, I can only imagine how that's shaped you as a woman today. Do you feel like that experience is really kind of the foundation of the woman you've become?
100%, 100%. And I mean, I have an opinion. I'm pretty strong-willed. These are things that people recognize in me right away. I don't always see it in myself, but it does 100%. As a 16-year-old, there was lots of judgment passed as well, or the more of the pity, like the pity party, like, oh, you know, and I never felt that. I'm like, I've got a great life. I'm good. Like, I've always been grateful for where I'm at, even if I wanted more. So again, the shameless era, like, not to be ashamed of wanting more, but not making wrong where I was and where I'm at. And I've continued that always, because I do believe 100% we're always in choice, no matter what our situation is. So if we don't own it, we just give our power up and give it away. And then that gets scary. To me, that's way more scary than just head down, butt up, thinking about what needs to happen today for tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Yeah.
I love that.
Me too.
That's great advice.
It's excellent advice.
Yeah, 100%. And I love how you touched on not feeling shame for wanting more, but not also feeling shame in that moment for where you're at. Like, at that same time, like,
Absolutely.
both of those things have to exist. And we talk a lot about duality, right? Of like, both things can exist at once without taking away from each other. So yeah, I love that.
100%. Yeah.
And
yeah.
so you raised your baby, you finished high school. What brought you back to Grand Prairie, or moved you to Grand Prairie, I guess?
Yeah. Well, prior to getting to Grand Prairie, I ended up back in just outside of Edmonton, a little town called Gibbons. That's where my family, that's where my mom, dad, brothers, and sisters were. And really, I finished grade 12, and I had ambitions to go on to university right then and there. I was done. Like, I just hit a wall. I thought, oh, this has been hard. Like, I just hit that moment where this has been hard, and I'm done doing it alone. And that is another big life lesson I've learned. Like, there is no badge in doing it alone. So I realized, okay, I have to figure out where are my people. And at that time, it was my family. So I remember the call pretty vividly. I called my dad, and I said, hey, Dad, what I said is, I give up. Okay, I surrender. I can't do this any longer. And he's since left the planet, but he was super rough around the edges, right? And he he got a little choked up and he said, you've been amazing. Like what you've done is incredible. Like, what do you need? And I said, I just want to come home. And I didn't even know how that was going to happen. Like I'm 3,000 miles away. I don't have money to get packed up and get on well, I certainly don't have a vehicle, so I'm not driving across Canada and get in a plane. So he just said, I'll send you a plane ticket. And it literally was that quick. And I got a hold of close friends and said, I had all garage sale everything in my apartment, but I'm like, hey, if you want it, you can have it. I'm out of here. And I packed up my son's bed and his belongings, like put that in a crate, and off to Alberta I went. And took about a year to just probably be a teenager, be a wild child for about a year with all this support. And then I was back to school and wanting to, again, look at the future a little bit brighter and get on with. I knew that I wanted more. I always wanted more, I wanted success. So, yeah.
I love that so
yeah,
much.
I'm glad
in
you
awe
took
of your
break.
story.
Like, and looking back, like I'm glad you took that for yourself when you moved home and with your family, and you took that for yourself, and you were even at such a young age able to recognize that you needed to fill that part of you, and that you had missed out on it, even though you're so grateful, I'm sure, that you had your son. But you missed out on some great years. So I'm glad you got to experience some of the teenage shenanigans.
Yeah. Get rid of the crazies, right? I mean, that's a part of it, and having that support.
Yeah.
I'd love to know more about your early days in business. You've been a clarity coach since 2000, and I'm sure that came from just a ton of experience and just wanting to share your knowledge. And so walk us through kind of where you got started in your entrepreneurial journey. You talk about wanting more and success. And so what was the starting point for you there?
It was, I mean, my first career in love was working with young offenders. So I worked in secure custody, and I worked with children in secure custody. I really loved it. With everything, there's good and the bad. And I one day very naively said to my husband, you know what, I think I need to buy me a job. And he said, what do you mean by that? I said, I just need to buy a business. Like, let's just buy a business, and then that can be my job. And he has always been incredibly supportive. And he's like, sure, like, what were you thinking? And I said, well, I wasn't really thinking. So I started looking what is available to me to buy. And that's where I first started. I bought a little day spa salon. And that was a big realization of, this whole business thing is actually not that easy. There's a lot to it. And I went through all the steps and, got the business loan, did all the things. And I remember standing in my space going, 5 years before that loan is paid off. What have I done? But again, I didn't do it alone. And I had people come in and help me. I had a sister-in-law that was a numbers person and a money person and a structure person and a business person. So she came in and helped with that. And then I joined my first coaching program, and it was a female entrepreneurs. And within that, I started to actually contribute back. And then when it was time to leave that program, I had women reach out to me saying, hey, where did you go? And where can we be coached by you? At the time, I thought, I'm not a coach. What do you mean? And my husband was seeing these texts come in, and he goes, what do you mean you're not a coach? Like, are you kidding me? Like, because he watched me do it on a volunteer basis. So anyhow, I went and got the certification and launched, because I did have a lot of experience about one of the biggest life lessons when I had my own business. And that transition was, when you're at the top of your game, or the top of your business, so you're the boss, where do you go? Right. Prior to that, I always had somebody to go to. If there was something that wasn't working, or I needed to hash it out or discuss it and come up with a solution, I always had a superior or someone above me to go to. all of a sudden I'm in my own business and I'm it. That space was no longer there. So I know how vital that is to create for women. And it's why my niche is primarily entrepreneurs, female leaders, or people in high level positions within their organizations, because that's missing, and nobody challenges the leader. Usually you're the boss. So where do you get your doubts and your storytelling that maybe you've told yourself, or your limiting beliefs? Where do they get challenged? And they get challenged in the coaching space, and with love, but otherwise we just stay stuck right where we are if we don't have those places. So that was sort of the reason for the transition and into that particular group of women.
Amazing. I am just like overflowing with all of these concepts that I wish more women had access to a space like that to discuss and to share. And I know one of my biggest struggles as an entrepreneur is validation, because nobody's ever saying good job. I don't have anybody saying like, yeah, you really crushed it today, Lindsay. I see all the hard work you're doing. And it can be pretty lonely trying to stay motivated and trying to keep moving the needle. And so what do you say to women that struggle in that aspect of being at the top, like you say?
Yeah, well, I personally, and it's what drives me, is I've created a safe space for those like-minded women to show up into. And that's where I do both group and one-on-one, but that's where the group is gold, because it's for that very thing. You've got a group of women that are like-minded and they know what it's like to be doing it alone. Or feeling like they're a little bit alone. You're not always doing it alone, but you still have that feeling. When you put yourself in those spaces and places, for me, it's no longer about the do. It's about the be. Like, how can you be in this space so that you are filled up and balanced to go and do the do? And where are you overdoing the do? If you've got like-minded women that can call you on it with love, that's going to, because we all have our stuff. We all have our stuff, and we all pull our own bullshit once in a while, and we smart rat ourselves into believing that what we're doing is the best, when we may be killing ourselves. So when you're in the picture, you can't see the frame, but when you put yourself into places and spaces like that, someone else can take you out of that, or they can be your cheerleader, because sometimes we need that too. We need those people. I say to my clients when I'm doing my kind of initial, one of my jobs is to believe in you more than you will in yourself some days. Eventually I want women to have that independence and to have that calmness always, but there's days where you don't have it. And like you say, you need someone to say, hey, it's okay. You've got this. You're forgetting all your brilliance. You're forgetting, what you've come through. You're forgetting, because so often, where's the celebration? You have grown. We're always growing, but we just keep going. Whereas those places and spaces can remind you, hey, did you forget that once upon a time, this was a dream of yours, and now you're here. Don't make it wrong. Celebrate it. Don't make it not enough. Like, take that time and that pause. And that is the kind of stuff. Like, there's lots of tangible things that happen, but there's a lot of, I say, below the neck, right? It's not the head stuff. It's like, let's drop it below the neck and get into some of the heart work as well, because we're heart-centered as women. We just are, whether we like it or not.
And I think too, like, when you invite a group of women who all have a similar mindset or in that leadership, there's a lot of collaboration that can happen. And that's so beautiful, because lots of times when you go to other people in your community for help or ideas or to bounce some things, it's not always met so kindly or in the best way. And I think that's beautiful too, as leaders, to be able to have a space to go to throw some stuff out there and not feel bad of taking someone's idea because they're giving it willingly. And
absolutely.
my question with your coaching, if someone were to sign up for like an individual one-on-one coaching, do they automatically get a group to join, or is it like two separate offerings?
Yeah. It's two separate offers, but that is That's brilliant. I would never have any problem with anybody in my one-on-one wanting to attend my group. It's more of a time factor for a lot of the women, especially in my space. Just putting that, trying to get them to carve out an hour, because it's an hour for one-on-one weekly, or the group is 90 minutes. So if they want to do both, I know, doesn't that sound crazy that where do we get 2 hours and 90 minutes? However, it's a reality for a lot of people. So that's why, but they are two separate offers. However, when someone has, if someone signed up for the private, absolutely, they have full invitation to attend the group.
I think that's an awesome tool for people to have.
Well, and sometimes it just might take them a little bit to build up the confidence to join the group. Maybe they need to walk through a bit of stuff with you first and realize that the group is a safe space for women. And this is something that we talk about often, women feeling safe in the company of other women, because I know we have all felt unsafe in the company of other women. And as an ambitious, confident, intelligent, driven woman, I'm sure you've encountered your fair share of women who want to tear that down about you. And so as you've grown throughout your career and put yourself out there more and more, how have you kind of adjusted your perceptions there to not worry so much about that type of woman?
You know what, I like, truthfully, for me, I have like a level of compassion for it, because I am so fortunate that I've been in these circles where I have great women, and I don't have, like, I mean, it shows up once in a while, but as a general rule, I don't have it in my space. I don't have it in my life. And when it does sneak in and I see it, I truly have a feeling of like what's missing in that, for that woman, that she feels that way. And I truly do wish only the best and hope that she'll get on the other side of it, so that because it's their own insecurity. Something's missing when you behave that way to someone else, no matter what, no matter if it's male or female. Like if you're hateful or you're mean-spirited or you're jealous, like that stuff all lives inside of you. So I'm like, geez, my go-to, it wasn't always, it used to be like, that person needs a throat punch, but it's like, it's not. Over the years, maybe it's in, growing and maturing, as there's a genuine sadness for that woman, because she's missing out, because there's so much gold when we collaborate with women. And we need to learn this. Men collaborate, men do business together, men just make it happen. Like, we can do the same. We're brilliant if we would give ourselves the permission and change the story of that we need to be guarded, because we don't. As a general rule, we do not. There's always going to be, a bad apple or someone that shows up, but to stop us from pursuing great relationships with like-minded women is just a disservice to ourselves. So I just hold them with some compassion, hope that they find their way. The door's always open, but I have a boundary at the same time, but I just have to move on and move out of that space and that energy.
We
Does
love
that make sense?
these boundaries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we talk about them quite often. But I mean,
Oh, they're
it's so true what you
necessary.
said about feeling that energy of a person lacking their self-awareness or whatever they may have going on. You can feel it as someone who has experienced positive experiences with women. As soon as that comes in, you feel it, and you do feel a sense of compassion, because you just want them to feel great too.
Yeah, exactly. Like nobody, it would, I always say 2 wrongs don't make a right, like once upon a time it was fight fire with fire. But no, 2 wrongs do not make a right. And so it's just holding space, holding your boundary, but moving on and doing what it is that you need to do for yourself, and be with the people that fill you up. Because we waste a lot of energy being in negative spaces, and it's not necessary.
Yeah. So with boundaries, I know I've never coached before, but Linz and I have talked about this just personally, and how with coaching and getting so close with women on a personal level that you are coaching, how do you keep the boundaries for yourself in the coaching? Is a big question that I had for you, because I know obviously you're such a compassionate and heartfelt person that you obviously put your heart and soul into it. And then obviously the coaching sometimes ends at some point. So how do you draw those boundaries for yourself and for your clients?
Really, it's about holding my clients, which are women, able. It's about holding them able. And that's a big boundary. When I first went into coaching years ago, and I remember when I was doing my certification, I used to think, what if I don't have the answer? Like, what if I don't know what to tell them? And I learned my best lesson was it's not mine to answer.
Right.
Like the answers are within my clients. They have the answers. I'm there to hold the space so they can get to what's true for them. It's not about ever telling anybody what to do or how to do it. So that has really helped, as far as the boundary crossing, because I always say you can't want something for somebody more than they want it for themselves. So
Right.
I have to respect the pace as well. I might see something crystal clear and think, oh, if only. And most women like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And yeah, no, that is not how it works, because that is not where the lesson is, and that's not where the growth is. It's about really holding my clients able to trust themselves and to be okay to want what they want, whether that's to like live naked on a beach in Mexico, or whether it's to be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation. It's theirs to decide, not mine. So I found that like very early on, that wasn't difficult. Like I just, and my other big one is, are they at request for it? Because as women, I've done this a gazillion times, mostly with family. You're just going to step right on in there and tell them what you think would be useful, and nobody asked. And that generally comes back to bite you very hard. So again, by learning the hard way and not overstepping those boundaries, because the boundaries work both ways.
Mhm.
I'm in a family business as well. And one of the boundaries is like, okay, this is, let's say, my husband's side of the line, this is my side of the line. And I can like tiptoe over, which is a problem, or he can invite me in and I can go in as the rescuer. They're both boundaries that I've crossed. So I learned that very quickly. And I learned it through, maybe not as quick as I could have, but I've learned it through experience, and I pass that on to my clients as well. I don't step over where I don't belong, and I don't allow someone to bring me in where I don't belong. I hold people able.
I love that.
So,
I I used to do a decent amount of one-on-one coaching and have since stopped due to a struggle with boundaries and, just being localized in the community and these relationships growing to a capacity beyond the coaching that I just wasn't necessarily ready to invite into my life. And so I love that you asked that, because I think that we do have to be so cautious about how much we give out to the world, and knowing how to stay in our own lane and when we're crossing a certain line, because once we've stepped over the line, we're over the line, and now we got to deal with the consequences of making
mhm.
that specific decision. So
Yeah. Yeah. Or you get to choose, like, it's like, okay, I stepped over. I created this. I can uncreate it. I can undo what I just did. So that's an invitation too. It doesn't always feel as good. And you do the, oh, why did I do that? And it shows up in different outfits. And just when you think you got the boundary line figured out, you find yourself on the other side of it again. But again, it's not being so hard on yourself and just putting the correction in for both your client and self.
Mhm.
And there's lots of ways to create boundaries. And women in business, especially starting out, they think they have to be available 24/7. And it's like, I always tell people, no, like part of my structure is the clarity on your what, get to the action, accountability, so that you can have the results. So it's getting clear on what works for you first. Like if you want to be done by 5 p.m., be done by 5 p.m. Because someone every time is going to phone you and say, well, the only time I have available is, 8 o'clock on Friday nights. And you're like, ugh. I know so many women that'll say, sure,
Right.
if that's all you have, and it's like, no, that's a boundary. There's a boundary, and being able to recognize it.
So many times
Mhm.
throughout my sales career, just making myself available to everybody. And as a fully commissioned saleswoman, it was like, this is my bread and butter. I got to eat.
Mhm.
I burnt out and learned that those boundaries were vital to my family and to my own structure. And yeah, so
The story. So it's like, what story am I believing that I think I need to go and do that at 8 o'clock at night, right? Like, let's like, peeling it back. What am I telling myself? What untrue story am I believing? And that is that there won't be enough. Like, I better do it now, or I'm going to miss out somehow. What if you say no to the 8 p.m. meeting, and tomorrow during your regular hours, the big client comes in? You know, I would say the universe is always testing us. You know, do you want what you want? Then how committed are you to your own boundaries and to what is important to you? And every time I've committed, something good comes in. Every time I've crossed that boundary, a lesson is delivered, you know, without fail.
That's so good to keep in mind. We're building boundaries left, right, and center these days. So we're just soaking up all of the experience and advice in this lane.
I'm for, honestly, if I'm honest, for setting boundaries, I'm a people pleaser. So I'm always
Working on it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good though. Like, sometimes our bodies, right, even give us the cues to be like, no, you're just not doing it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
it's in and listening. And, I think it all, honestly, for me personally, comes down to like that level of shamelessness, right? Of letting go of the shame that like we're saying no to something or whatever. It's okay to say no. It doesn't need an explanation. Like you say no as a sentence, it's a word. Like it doesn't need anything else behind it. So,
Absolutely.
but I know that coming into shamelessness is a process, and I think it's a daily process, and I think that it shows up for people all the time. It's never like I'm completely shameless, like I don't feel it. It's always that work in progress. So what do you do? Like, do you have some tools that you always go to when you're starting to find yourself in that loop of like the story I'm telling myself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a daily, but one of the biggest things that I think is super important is taking the pause, like taking time. So when you feel that angst, because I say we all feel it somewhere in our body. Me, it's my gut, you know, like when I'm walking around with that, it's like a red flag, and it's like, okay, whoa up, take a minute. What is actually happening here? And 9 times out of 10, we're outside our value system of what's important to us. So for instance, if we say family is important, yet we're working 14-hour days, we're out of alignment, and that causes angst. So for me, the only, like off the top of my head, one of the biggest tools is the pause. It's just the pause, and to recognize it and recognize what's my why am I doing this, what's important. And a big question I ask myself, does this bring me joy? And if it's really ugly and I'm losing the joy and I'm losing the fun, then I just have to reevaluate. And you, all women, all people, they know where the correction needs to go. It's pretty clear. It's just having the what I want, awareness, I guess, but also the bravery to do what is good for you, because there will be a ripple effect. This whole thing that it's selfish, another S word, you know, the should is an S word that I don't like. The selfish is an S word I don't like. And shame, like those are just words that it's just time to reframe them.
Yeah.
Destigmatize them.
Mm-hmm.
You're so well-spoken and elegant and poised and confident,
But really funny.
but super funny.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with imposter syndrome still? Is this something that shows up for you, or is that just kind of old hat? You've dealt with that one years ago.
No, it still shows up. However, what I try, because I say this to my clients all the time, all I have is me. Like I am who I am. I actually don't even know how to be any different. So it's quite comical to hear you say, not comical, but it's like when you say poised, I'm like, I consider myself a little rough around the edges. I don't always deliver things with, you know, poise and elegance, but I am who I am, and it's all I have. So it's just really owning that. And I say that to all women, because that's all we have. And at the end of the day, if we're true to ourselves and we're authentic, we're going to attract people that are attracted to us. And isn't that what we want? Like we want those relationships. So if someone's offended by my rawness or my, you know, not being poised or dropping the odd F-bomb, they're probably not my people, but that's okay. that's okay too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's such a safeness in having your people, right? Because it allows you to shed that extra layer and be more yourself because you're like, "Ah, I got some people, it's okay." Like, I'd love more people, but it's all good. I don't need any more, right? So that's
Yeah,
always a good feeling to have and be vulnerable.
100%.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish that more women could understand that early on in their life. I mean, it took me years to realize that what other people think of me is none of my business, and that I really love who I am. So if they have a different perception, then that's on them, and that's okay. But in building community and in building businesses, you have to be on, you have to be out in the community, you have to present yourself. And when you were in that business building phase of your life, did you ever feel kind of just like exhausted by having to be out and be on and networking and talking to people? And it just, feels like a whole other role that we have to play in life.
Yeah, and I guess honestly, like when I had my first business, which was the day spa salon, I didn't even put that pressure on myself. I had like a ton of fun. So I joke that ignorance is bliss. I'm like, oh, this is just fun. No, we're going to sponsor this. We're going to do that. Were there days I was tired at the end of the day? 100%. But I never felt like it was something I needed to do. And then when I started building my coaching business, I got in that little space of, okay, well, what's the right thing to do? What should I be doing? And then I lost some of the joy, and I thought, oh, this isn't why I decided to do this. Why am I getting caught up in the, what does it look like and what should I be doing? I just need to do me, like you do you. And of course I love information, and I like, you want the marketing tools and ways for like ways to get the exposure, but I had to stop making me wrong and how I chose to do it. And it's okay. And it may not look like what everyone else does. That's been my whole life. So why am I, I won't say late years, would I, like the age that I'm at now, that's a crazy place to go to start worrying about if I'm doing it correctly or if I'm doing it right. I just have to do me and trust that I'm going to attract the business I need to attract. And more than the business, attract the women that need the space and that need to be served and need to feel safe, all of those things, and need to really own their greatness and get the heck out of their own way. Like that's my passion, not the how to.
Right.
So yeah,
you spoke
that's
a
the
lot.
difference.
And when you came to Grand Prairie, it was February, right? Yeah.
International
My
Women's
baby
Day.
fog. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
March. Yeah.
But when you came, you spoke a lot to just like the changing of the culture, right? How, yeah, I won't say later years, but how as we get older, we need to start changing that for our children or for the women that are still coming. We need to show them that we can be safe as a community of women together, and that's okay. And it spoke to me a lot. I loved hearing you speak about that. Would you mind touching on that and your thoughts on that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So in the, I don't remember my speech verbatim, so I'm not sure exactly what part you're referring to. Can you just give me, because I think we need to change, period. Like we're
Yeah,
growing
no,
constantly.
into more of like how women need to show up for women more, be more supportive, be less judgmental, and just have
Oh,
open and shamelessness with each other, but like vulnerable and authentic, and how when we do that, it allows other women to do that in return.
oh, 100%. And I think it begins with us. We have to put ourselves in check because we are guilty of it. So it's like it's not perfection. It's being able to recognize when we're doing it and then put that correction in. That's where it starts. Because, I shared some stories of my own unbiased, unconscious biases, and I was mortified. Like I like to think I'm somebody that, like I said in my speech, like that is woke. Oh no, I'm not one of those people. And then there I was, smack dab in the middle of it, unaware that I was even doing it. So I think really the first step is us being honest with ourselves. So when we make this catty remark or we make a snide remark or we have a judgment, to stop ourselves, like to be able to really go inside and say, oh, where does that live? You know, is that what I want to perpetuate? Because whether you say it out loud or not, it's irrelevant. If it's your thought process, it's that energy that's coming out. So, and the second part, which we're all a little nervous of, is calling it out. You know, when you see someone else do it, and you can do it with love, it doesn't have to be a confrontation. You know, it can be, oh, wow, like you're better than that. I know you are. You're kinder than that. You know, like it's just being able to make other people aware. Or another one that I like to use, because rather than it being a fight, let's say, or confrontational, is, oh, what do you mean by that? Like if someone says something offside, rather than kind of get offended, I ask for the explanation, because one of two things can happen. They'll either clarify because my interpretation was wrong, or it was offside and someone needs to reevaluate how that was presented. So either way is non-threatening, but that's where it has to start. It has to start with us, like whether it's how women treat each other, whether it's, you know, anything to do with any visible or I say marginalized groups, like we all, and we were raised certain ways that we're not even always aware. So just taking that self-responsibility first and being vocal. Don't let it slide under the rug when you see something that is not okay.
I would love your thoughts on gossip. One of my favorite parts about my friendship with Justine is we didn't grow up together. We've only known each other for about 3 years. And having lived in the same community my whole life, it's just I've unfortunately sat at some really gossipy tables and in some gossip circles. And that is one thing that I'm working so hard to change and break in my life, is just not being a part of those conversations. We have so much more to talk about than other people. And so,
Yeah.
what have you learned about gossip over the years?
Well, a couple things. When I find myself gossiping, if and when, and I'm talking, we can paint it as not a big deal. Let's say I'm having a conversation with my husband, but it goes on to somebody else. Inevitably, we will end up fighting, the
Okay.
two of us,
Yeah.
every time. And I'm like, oh, I was talking smack, or, you know, whatever, or like in someone else's business, and it was none of my business to be in. And then, so I know it creates a negative energy. So I'm so committed to not being in it. Plus, again, I have a physical reaction now when I'm in it. I've been in circles where honestly, I feel like my nervous system is going to explode because there's some nasty conversation happening. So, and I'm in it. So I have had to say, and I'm ready. I've done it and never has it come back on me, but I say, you know what? I can't be a part of this conversation right now because I feel there's lots of good in the world, you know, and that's what I will say. And usually the conversation stops and people look at you, and I used to worry about, oh, she thinks she's better than, which is not true. I know that that's not true. And then it just switches the conversation. So to me, again, it's us taking the responsibility to either get out of it, say something, not, and eventually you start to move away from those places and spaces. I realize that there's some that you still find yourself in, but again, it's managing it. It's human. You're going to find it.
Experience a few months now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we found ourselves sitting at a table that we didn't expect the conversation to take a turn that it did. And we both left feeling like quite icky.
Well,
about
exactly.
it, to
Having
be
that
honest.
visceral reaction.
Just that we didn't participate in the conversation, but just that we were sitting at the table while the conversation was happening.
Yeah.
It's
like
hard.
Life-changing, recognizing like, whoa, these are the kind of tables we don't want to sit at. And
Yeah.
the craziest part was we actually thought it was a table we really wanted to sit at.
We really wanted to be at that table. Yeah.
So
that's a great lesson in itself. Like that's a great lesson in itself, because again, there's a little bit of, sometimes that can be a confidence booster, right? In the sense that, you know what, we're good. Like we're good at what we're doing. Like the two of you, we've got this. And sometimes thinking that you have to be at a different table that on the outside looks like it might be a bigger, better, badder table. And then you get there and you're like, oh, it's not what it's perceived to be. So sometimes there's just a really beautiful lesson in that. And again, you have to give yourself grace, because sometimes we get gobsmacked with where we end up in the conversation. So it's not always easy to say, whoa up, I don't want to be a part of this conversation. But there is a bravery in, you know what, I can't be a part of this because this is what I believe, period. And it gives everybody permission, because everybody's human. Everyone's human, and it's easy to go down that little sewer hole once in a while. But if we have people that are kind enough to bring it to our awareness and give us the cue, like, that's a thank you. It should be. And if it's not, they're not your people.
I think what you touched on, I just want to make sure we put some extra light on it, because it was so amazing. We've never talked about it. But it's more of like acknowledging that we do it. And I know we've talked about not being perfect, and we're still a work in progress, but it does. We've been conditioned in ways we have no idea that we've been conditioned sometimes. Like I grew up on a small farm town, and I think about how redneck and racist it was. And I'm just like, oh gosh, right? As an adult, but those things, it takes a really long time to recorrect them. So I think what you said is so powerful about really being able to sit with yourself shame-free, but acknowledging what you've done and why, and how to correct it. I think it's so powerful.
Absolutely. If we can learn from it, then nothing bad happened. If we can learn from it, that's all we're asking. That's what growth is, learning something new and doing something different that really supports people around us as well. So, and we do have to do it without the shame. It starts with us. It does. And it's okay to once upon a time
We hide
be a
it.
hillbilly.
Yeah, like we don't acknowledge it when we have the shame, because we have that shame level. So we're like, oh, we did think that. No, I didn't think that. Or no, I didn't say that. Or, you
Yeah.
try to hide behind it, and it just doesn't work.
No, it's like own it so that you can clear it, because it's a lie, right? And it'll just live there. If you're lying to yourself, it just it festers. Whereas if you can just own it, yeah, I made some bad decisions, or I thought a certain way because I just didn't know any better at the time, but I know better now, and I'm committed to doing better. That's all we have. That was the story with my niece, my niece who is gay. And I had this whole other thought process going on that I wasn't even aware. Like, I just wasn't aware that I was even
I had a friend
feeding
call me out so hard one time. This was a couple years ago. We were at the Folk Fest in Grand Prairie, and this woman walked by that I just had a bit of history with, some negative emotions attached to, and I just made some stupid snide comment about her haircut. And my friend just instantly snapped at me. He was like, Lindsay, you're better than that. Why would you say something like that? And this was a man calling me out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I stopped dead in my tracks in the moment, and I looked at him and I was like, oh my God, you're right. And it was like
Yeah.
this clarity moment of just like, why would I even think that? Why would I verbalize that? Like, get your shit together, Lindsay, be better. Even
Yeah.
though
Yeah.
I was ashamed of the fact that I had even said that, it stuck with me and I learned the lesson from it. And there's so
Yeah.
much
Because that's a level of kindness. He had a kindness and a trust and a love for you that he's like, you're better than that, as opposed to if he said nothing. If we go around saying nothing changes, and I know not everyone's comfortable in speaking up, and I don't get it because I'm pretty vocal. So if I see something, like, I'm like, how could you just stand there? I'm that person. But not everybody's made that way. So it's not about making people wrong, but it's about just being aware of where it lives in you first, because at least we have control over that. You may not be the person that's going to do the public service announcement. However, if you can minimally put yourself in check, that's a beautiful thing. And if you have a spirit that has no problem saying things out loud, then do that. Use that gift with kindness, to say to your friend, like, he didn't attack you. He just said, Lindsay, you're better than that, and that punches, right?
It really does. And honestly, Heather, it's women like you using your voice and standing up shamelessly and with confidence and intelligence and bravery. And that's paving the way for women like us to say, wow, look at Heather speaking up and using her voice and changing the conversation and dealing with the consequences, good, bad, or ugly, but she's making a decision and taking action and moving forward and choosing happiness. And it really is truly an inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you. That means the world to me, because that's what it's all about. I always say we only get one trip around. Maybe people believe there's multiple trips, but for now, this is it. And if we can't do it with joy and ease and really get back to what our values are, then what are we chasing and why? Like, it's getting to the why and living from that place. And we're human. We're constantly growing. Constantly. If you talk to me 10 years from now, there's going to be more, there's going to be different. Like, we're constantly growing. So I remember, I'll tell this story. I thought it was kind of hilarious about parenting. This mom was telling me that her adult children, the one boy's like, I'm never going to do whatever, that mom and dad did. In my era, drinking and driving with your children in the back of a pickup was a thing. Like, that was just, everyone did it. Right?
Yeah.
In the box, not even in the car, like in the box, right? And we thought nothing of it. Now people, like, that's mortifying to even think of. So anyway, so this young guy was saying, like, I will never do that. And his older brother said, oh, don't worry, you'll have your new level of dysfunction that you'll be sorry for as well. Because we create it. We're just constantly growing, and we only know what we know in the moment, but at least we have to be willing. Now we know, oh my gosh, that was so wrong and so bad on so many levels. But it's not about, making all the parents back then these horrendous people that blah, blah, blah. It's about, okay, we've learned. We're not going to do it that way any longer. So that's all we're doing. We're just trying to learn and do our best and have some level of balance, joy, and just that love coming back to us.
So speaking of joy, outside of coaching and your career, what do you do when you need to fill your cup? What brings you joy outside of your career?
Oh, I like downtime. I love to read. So that's something when it's outside of my career, because I'm always in conversation, it's zero conversation. And just vegging.
Yeah.
And I love to read. So that literally brings me joy, because I have to fill it back up. But I love family. Like, I'm a grandma, so when I get to spend time with my children and grandchildren, and I love to travel and we make plans, like, that is my all-time favorite. Even when it's busy, like we're coming into summer, I have a schedule on my phone. We call it the H&H Inn here in Kelowna. It's like, hey, who's coming? Who do we have room for? What weekend? And it's just go, go, go. And I absolutely love it. I find myself, I'll stand back and just watch the mayhem and the kids. And yeah, that's my favorite.
That reminds me, I got to book in with Chateau Kate this summer and find my own time to come to Kelowna.
I did. I already messaged her because she was at the pool. I'm like, I'm on my way.
Yeah, exactly. And it is making the time. Yeah.
We are coming up on the hour. This whole hour just flew by, Heather. I feel like
Oh.
you all day. What are some of your words to live by? What are your words of wisdom that you call on in your life and that you would like to share with our listeners?
Oh, that's a big question. My words of wisdom, or what I live by, really, I mean, the biggest thing that I have to remind myself of daily is there's only one you, that you're unique and it's okay. And there's nothing wrong with who you are, and show up exactly as you are. And the other one that I often think about is, it is that question, does this bring me joy? And if not, what do I need to do about it? It's never about making anyone else wrong. It's like what needs to change, because we have the power and we're constantly in choice. That's the biggest one. We are constantly in choice. And we are anything that anywhere where we're at is because we put ourselves there. Like we're part of the problem and we're part of the solution always. So just being able to, it's that ownership piece, I think. I think it goes a long way in just owning where we're at, good or bad, because you have to celebrate and own that, because so often that one gets dismissed. And then if we don't own where we're at, then we feel like we're not in choice. We're giving away our power. We give up our power and we give up our choice. And that's a killer as far as I'm concerned. So I hope that helps. That was
Do you feel like we just had a therapy
I
session?
do,
'Cause
actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
I feel like we
incredible.
just was there.
I know, I'm just like,
Yeah.
so many takeaways from this conversation. You are a true beauty, a champion of women, of success, ambition in general. We are so thankful that you gave us our time today, Heather. And
oh, wow.
how can people get in touch with you? How would you like people to reach out if they'd like to learn more?
They can, I'm on Instagram under Heather_Grato_coaching. So DMs work. My website is gratocoaching.com. All my contact information is on there as well. So anytime, I'm always open to popping on a call, whether it be a strategy call, see where women are at, if they want information on the group or one-on-one. I'm actually heading to Arizona tomorrow to host the Power of You retreat. So I've got 8 women. It's a beautiful.
I might,
Yes,
which is amazing.
yes, yeah, thank you,
And
yeah.
Arizona, right? See, I told you, Arizona just cracks people open energetically.
Yeah, and Sedona. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And again, it's everything I believe, because it's an opportunity for women to come and pause, because the clarity is in the pause as well. It's not in the go, go, go. So I've got goosebumps just thinking about it. It's going to be magical. Yeah. And it's just about holding
Very
space.
Excited
Yeah.
for you. I hope you share a little behind the scenes look of some of the shenanigans and wishing you
I
and
sure
all the
will.
ladies all the best on the retreat. It's going to be a blast. They're
Yeah.
going to learn a lot. So
Thank you. Thank you both so much. This was an absolute pleasure to do. So anytime, I just love sharing, and I love doing girl talk. That's what this is. It's like having coffee with the girls. Yeah.
that's right. Well, you're great at it, and we would love to keep the conversation going. So thank you again, Heather. It was an absolute pleasure having you here.
Yeah. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.